So a couple weeks ago, I bought this on eBay, a GTX 970 for just $72, and that's brand new. Of course, my belief is that that's not what it's going to be. It's going to be some sort of fake. Now it's arrived. We're going to take a look. Already, there is a sign that it's not going to be very impressive. You notice that they've listed on here that the US value is only $20, a lot less than I paid for it. Now, this is potentially an interesting thing to look at because it'll allow us to answer a simple, basic question. When buying fake goods, do you get more when you pay more? Because not that long ago, I purchased this $55 GTX 780. So $20 less. Did I in fact get less for my money? Is the $70 video card going to be better? Or is it in fact going to be exactly the same? I don't know. So here it is. You can see it doesn't look like they used fancier packaging. Now, in case you don't happen to know this, the GTX 970 and the GTX 780 benchmark more or less the same. So there it is, truth in advertising, presumably. So this more expensive card is coming in a less fancy box. Wow, they don't even bother to label the driver's CD. It's just a standard CDR. This seems to be really down market. Okay, so it does not look identical on the inside. It came in an anti-static container, which is kind of nice. The heat sink is a little different looking. Let's compare the two side by side. But what about the card itself? That's the only part that's really going to be informative here. So interestingly enough, you can see that there's a different number of PCI pins. That's definitely suggestive. Let's look at the back, though. And it does look like it's a different card for sure. It'll be interesting to see how well it performs. This one's got a little bit more chips on it, so maybe it really does have the 2 gigabytes of RAM that it advertises. This one claims to have 4 gigabytes, but it just turned out to only have 1 gigabyte. Let's see from this view. And you can see this looks pretty different too. So clearly not identical. So the question is, did this card, the more expensive one, is it going to actually perform better than the cheaper card? Or does price not matter when you're buying counterfeit goods? So I put the card in my computer, and happily the fan does not make an atrocious amount of noise. And I ran my favorite comparative benchmarking tool. It's quick and dirty. It's called UserBench. And the card showed up as a GTX 970. You can see that here. But its performance relative to the rest of the GTX 970s is really horrible. So this is the average for a GTX 970. And this is where it benchmarked. Way outside of the normal distribution. So, as suspected, completely fake. Now, it was a little tricky to figure out from these numbers what the closest equivalent GPU would be. Just for comparison, here's the other fake card that I got, which is slower than this card, but not by a huge amount. My best guesstimate is that roughly speaking, it's equivalent to a GTX 650. And just for amusement's sake, I have that over here compared against a GTX 460, which is what was in my computer before all this shenanigans started. And you can see the GTX is actually a faster card on average than this so-called GTX 970. So let's see what GPU-Z has to say about things. So here's what GPU-Z has to say. On this side, we've got some random user on the internet who has presumably a real GTX 970, and over here we have the GTX 970 quote-unquote that I bought. And you can see that the numbers are not all that similar. I'll just point out a few highlights. The bus width is strange, and the bandwidth is about a third, and the number of shaders is maybe 10%. Interestingly, the pixel fill rate seems to actually be higher. Not really sure what that means and whether or not that's actually calculated. So clearly some sort of bizarro card. Maybe it is a GTX 650, who knows. So user benchmark is nice because it's quick and it gives you a distribution of other people's cards, but doesn't look anything like a game. It's nowhere near as complex. So I ran this oldie but a goodie, the Heaven benchmark from, gosh, what, half a decade ago? Certainly not the most fancy benchmark, but it's enough to give the card a little bit of workout. You can see that everything seems to be displaying okay, and we'll get a benchmark result in a little bit here. I wouldn't say the performance is very good. Certainly it's no 970, but it does appear to at least be usable. You have to keep in mind that it's only using half a gigabyte of video memory in order to run this benchmark. So with a game that fully stresses all supposed 2 gigabytes, we may see a different result. We'll have to find out. But at least for modest gaming, it seems like this card would do okay. So the benchmark completed, and here's the result of the so-called GTX 970. And we can compare it against a much older video card, which I own and tested in the same computer, a GTX 460, which is shown on the left. As you can see, this fake card is not even as fast as a GTX 460, which was a perfectly good card back in the day, but I mean, come on, that's an old card. So, looks like, at best we're getting maybe 25%, maybe 20% of the performance of a real GTX 970. Now we're going to test if this card really has 2 gigabytes of RAM. And to do that, I'm going to do something you probably didn't know you could do, which is run multiple copies of the Heaven benchmark. Each copy takes up about 500 megabytes of video memory. So we can just keep on piling on copies and see when and if the card chokes. Now this may take a little while, but it might be fun to watch. With the fake 780, we got massive video glitches when we exceeded 1 gigabyte. And we're just about at 1 gigabyte now, so we're about to find out if this really has at least a gigabyte. Now what we're asking this to do is fairly intensive and kind of mean, but a correctly functioning video card would have no problem running multiple copies of this benchmark. It would run out of memory at some point, but it wouldn't crash or glitch out. So we've already exceeded 1 gigabyte easily, and I don't see any problems yet. So that suggests that it really does have 2 gigabytes, or at least 1.5 gigabytes. It would seem that they've gotten more clever since the first fake card that I purchased. Now they're really putting the amount of memory that they're advertising in them, which means that the card isn't massively unstable. So it might be really slow, which people might or might not notice, but it won't crash, which people would definitely notice. It clearly surpassed the 1.5 gigabytes, suggesting that this card really does have 2 gigabytes of RAM. So if you're going to buy one of these fake cards and you're hoping to be able to use it, I would recommend getting one with 2 gigabytes because it's probably more likely to be a true characterization of the amount of memory in the card. Just to compare my other video, the screen would be full of snow and the video card driver would be crashing intermittently at this stage. Alright, we can try to launch one more. There shouldn't be enough memory for another copy, but the driver should be smart enough to see that too much video RAM is being requested and just block the loading of the 5th benchmark here. So we're now up to almost 1.9 gigabytes. Now maybe what will happen here is the driver will be smart enough to start swapping unused textures in and out of memory. That'd be kind of cool if it's true, because it does sort of look like we've got all 5 running, although at really miserable frame rates. So that's actually pretty intelligent of the driver to do that. It means that you won't crash, and it means the program won't quit and just gets really slow. So at this point we have 1,970 odd megabytes of textures and video memory, and everything seems to look just fine. I mean, slow as the dickens, but working okay. So the video card really does have 2 gigabytes of memory. So that's nice. That means that for $70, I got a card that performs at roughly 20% of a real GTX 970 and usable video card. So for low-end gaming, it would actually be just fine. Now, it's interesting to compare that it's not even as good as a GTX 460, which you can probably buy for, what, $30, $40 used now. So I definitely overpaid for this video card. There's no question about that. There's a certain amount of honor to buying fake goods on eBay and then reporting them to eBay to get those scammers in trouble. Because what they're hoping for here is that someone who doesn't know any better buys this card and doesn't discover that its performance is horrible until well after the return period is over. So to conclude my cliffhanger from the beginning of this video, did paying $20 more for a fake video card give me better performance? Yes, it did. This $70 video card performed about 20% better than this $55 video card, and the $75 video card didn't crash and have graphical glitches all over the place. So, more money did give me something better. That's not to say it was either of them were good deals, though.